Okay, so in this video, I will talk about the code for experiment 2 in part of lab 1. So essentially, this code here, right? Well, what we wanted to do was we wanted to turn on two LEDs at the same time, but they were going to have different time intervals. So essentially, in order to make it so that they have two different time intervals, we need two separate basically need two separate timers, right? One to count the LED 1 and the other one to count LED 2. So essentially we could implement that using if statements, right? So if we look at our code now, if we look, right, so line 35, I established my two variables for the two timers, which was what I had previously said that we needed. And then the while loop, right, we wanted to keep on repeating, so that's why we established a while loop. And so lines 39 through 41, essentially what that's saying is if the timer is 0, right, essentially toggle the first LED for 50, right? So the timer is 50. And then, however, if we go further down to line 49, the delay command is 10 milliseconds, right? So multiplying that 10 millisecond delay times that timer of 50 is essentially going to give us a total delay of 500 milliseconds, which is what we wanted. So we want one light to blink at 500 milliseconds and the other light or LED to blink at 1000 milliseconds. So now if we go to lines 44 through 47, essentially what it says there is that when timer 2 is 0, essentially toggle LED 2, and then the timer is set to 100. Now that timer, again, we're going to multiply it by our delay millisecond to give us 1000 milliseconds, which is what we wanted, right? Because we wanted the LEDs to turn on at different time intervals, one time interval being 500 milliseconds and the other time interval being 1000 milliseconds. So yeah, and then lines 50 through 52 is basically going to tell us how many times that, okay, so for example, if the timer 1 is greater than 0, right, essentially decrease the timer by 1. And that's essentially what's going to allow us to use that delay ms command, and the same thing for timer 2. Essentially, that's what it's going to do. And essentially, it's going to run over, right, until it reaches. And yeah, so now I will show you the results for this code. And again, I will reiterate some stuff when talking about it in the results section. So yeah, let's get to it.
In this video, I will demonstrate the results of Lab 2. In this section of the lab, another LED was added to the system. Both LEDs are supposed to light up simultaneously and have different time intervals. LED 1 should have a time interval of 500 milliseconds, and LED 2 should have a time interval of 1000 milliseconds. So now if we were to look at our board, we see that both LEDs turn on simultaneously, or at the same time. Then LED 2, since it has a time interval of 1000 milliseconds, it stays on for 1000 milliseconds or a second. And since LED 2 has a time interval of 500 milliseconds, as every 500 milliseconds that pass, it turns on. And yeah, that's pretty much it.